Power Play. I'm Vashi Kapelos in Ottawa. Tonight, the campaign is on.
We will have to do things that we haven't imagined before at speeds we didn't think possible.
What we need is a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change.
I can tell you with so much confidence, people are better off when you elect New Democrats.
Party campaigns fan out across eastern and central Canada to start with starting line promises as they fight to win your vote. We've got full coverage ahead with candidates on their policy promises in just moments. Then, following the leaders, we've got our own team of CTV reporters on the campaign trail. They'll be with us for insights on what's happening when the cameras aren't rolling. Plus, how did the launches go and what to expect on week one of the campaign with our front bench. Dan Moulton, Shakir Chambers, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone will be here a little bit later on. First, though,
It's the country that I'm fighting for each and every day. And if you give the Liberal Party your vote, it's the country I will fight for the next 4 years as your Prime Minister. It's the country that together we will build Canada strong.
Do you want a fourth Liberal mandate where they will raise your taxes and drive up your costs? Or do you think it's time to put Canadian taxpayers first for a change with a new Conservative government?
When you elect a New Democrat, wherever you are, wherever you've been, and whoever you voted for before, if you elect a New Democrat, you're going to get someone that's going to fight for you. You're going to get someone that's going to wake up every single day and say, what can I do to help out everyday folks?
they are off. It's day 2 of Canada's 45th federal election, and party leaders, as you saw there, are out pitching the policy promises they hope will win your vote. Mark Carney, is promising a Liberal government would offer a middle-class tax cut by trimming 1 percentage point off the lowest income tax bracket by bringing it to 14%, while Pierre Poilievre has announced a Conservative government would go further, cutting that tax rate by more than 2% to 12.75%. And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh detailing plans today to boost this country's housing supply, including earmarking federal crown land to build 100,000 rent-controlled homes by 2035 and train 100,000 additional workers in skilled trades. With us now on the first policy promises of this campaign are federal candidates running in this election. Charles Sousa is the Liberal candidate for Mississauga Lakeshore in Ontario. Michael Barrett is the Conservative candidate for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes. And Craig Sauvé is the NDP candidate for LaSalle and Verdun in Quebec. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for making the time. I think we're having a bit of connectivity issue with Mr. Sousa, so I'll wait to let the control room. Okay, never mind. He is back. So, hi, everybody. Now I can see everybody. Thank you so much for making the time for the conversation tonight. Mr. Sousa, I will start off with you because your party was the first out of the gate yesterday to make that announcement on the tax cut. It is estimated to cost federal coffers $6 billion. Your leader today, Mr. Carney, criticized Pierre Poilievre for even broadly indicating that he would cut other things to pay for that. But your party hasn't identified anything outside of capping the public service that would pay for this tax cut. You've talked about accelerating defense spending and balancing a budget in 3 years. Help us with the math on that, and what would you cut specifically?
And let's be clear that the Conservatives, what they're doing always comes with a catch. They've already made clear that whatever they cut, whatever they spend, they will then have offsetting cuts. And obviously their proposal is even more reckless in respect to what they've done in the past, because dental care, child care, pharma care, all of that equates to very much the things that they said they would cut in the past, and that is pretty much their resolve in respect to what they're proposing here. But economic growth, national unity, improving our competitiveness, to strengthen our economy, to sustain those very programs is critical. And we are strong as a G7 nation. We can be stronger still by promoting some of that unity and promoting our competitiveness, and that's where we get that sustainability to support these programs.
I have to follow up because a couple of things. You said the Conservatives' proposal was even more reckless. First of all, I have to ask you, does that mean that the proposal that you're making is reckless? Dental care, no, they have talked about not being in favor of. Child care, however, they have not said unequivocally that they would cut that. And the other things that you mentioned, I mean, you're kind of putting words in their mouths. And my question was not, I will pose those questions to your Conservative colleague in a moment. My question was to you. What are the Liberals going to do to pay for a $6 billion annual tax cut?
And as I said, and as Mark Carney has said over the course of this few weeks now, we have to have a stronger economy. We have to have one Canada, not 13 separate jurisdictions, to improve our competitiveness, to expand our trade routes to other parts of the world, to strengthen our economy further, to sustain the very programs that are important to Canadians. Canadians care about the dental care program. They care about child care. They care about pharmacare. They care about ensuring that we strengthen our economy. And that's exactly what we're proposing. And people want more money in their pockets. And through this middle income tax cut, it supports them in that endeavor as well.
So is some sort of mythical economic growth going to lead to that? Because I don't see a single private sector economist forecasting that be the case given the tariff cut at the moment.
Bessie, I've done this. I've done this in the past. I have had an opportunity of doing 6 budgets, one that I repeated twice, and enabling us to have economic growth. We were able to increase our program spending. We were able to support many Canadians through that process. I provided for national immunity measures by having only one securities regulator to improve our competitiveness while enhancing CPP across Canada. We need to do more of that. And when we increased our economic growth, we were able to sustain our program spending and balance the books at the same time. We can make this happen provided we stay united. And the opposition, they only care about maintaining that divisiveness, and anger is not solutions, and slogans certainly are not solutions. We have to have a concrete plan putting forward that we are proposing in these programs.
Okay, and we'll circle back to that point around economic growth, because I take your point about your experience, but I, again, don't know of any private sector economist that is forecasting vis-a-vis Donald Trump. We're all of a sudden going to see, booming economic growth in this country. Mr. Barrett, I do want to ask you about what you're proposing, because it is even bigger in both the size of the tax cut, but also foregone revenue. When fully implemented, it'll be about $14 billion. Your leader today said that you would cut the bureaucracy and foreign aid. By how much?
Look, let's talk about why we have to do this, why we need this middle class tax cut. It's all about bringing it home. We need working Canadians to be able to take home more of what they're earning. After the last 10 years, we've seen that it's harder and harder for them to get ahead. The Liberals in 2015, they promised to cut taxes. Now 80% of Canadians pay more tax than they did 10 years ago. They're paying $10,000 more per year in taxes than they were. And so that's why it's so important. They're going to pay $800 more this year for groceries than they did last year. Our tax cut is about putting $900 back in the pocket of the average working Canadian, or $1,800 for a family. That's going to make a real difference for them. And so the things that we're going to cut are the Liberal insider waste and corruption that we've seen explode over the last 9 years with the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. When you look at the management consulting that we've seen in Ottawa, more than doubling to between $18 and $20 billion per year. And this is where the money's coming from for things like their green slush fund that saw $400 million identified by Canada's Auditor General as being, inappropriately handled, misappropriated funds, with the Liberal-appointed chair being found guilty of breaking the Conflict of Interest Act, or the $60 million Arrive scam, $20 million going to a pair of guys who didn't even do any work on the app. So it's when you look at the record of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, it's very easy to quickly identify areas like this where we're going to be able to exact the savings that we need.
With great respect, we're talking about a $14 billion annual cost. You're referencing $450 million the Auditor General has identified.
Do you know
that every bit of outsourcing in this government, do you have evidence to the idea that it is all wasteful spending? Because under the previous Harper government, there was also spending on outsourcing. It is a function, perhaps not at this level, but it is a function of government. And when you talk about cutting foreign aid, again, are you wiping out all $7 billion of foreign aid, or will you keep $1.5 billion that assists refugees like those from Ukraine just for being here in Canada?
Look, when you have the doubling of management consulting, but we don't see an improvement in the services that Canadians are receiving, my constituents aren't getting passports any faster. In fact, it took them even longer to get the services that they used to get at half the cost than they see now with the Liberals. So you can, at a minimum, cut that management consulting in half. But
that's only $10 billion versus $14 billion annually.
On foreign aid, we've said that when we've got money that's going and supporting dictatorships and money that's not actually going to help the intended the folks that are intended to receive it, that's what we're going to charge. So we're going to have to
But what
review.
if there's none of that?
Well,
what if all $7 billion is helping out genuine causes? Like, what are you going to cut?
Well, I think that I think that Pierre Poilievre has identified some areas already, and the other thing, Vashi, is that you can expect from us now that we're into a campaign is a fully costed platform for all of these commitments, and I think that Canadians are going to be refreshed by the idea that they're going to see their taxes go down, but not see the inflationary deficits that we've seen with the Carney-Trudeau Liberals.
Well, I have questions about the plausibility of that, and I look forward to the full costing because I think both you and the Liberals said at some point that will be coming during this campaign. Mr. Sauvé, I do want to ask about the promise that your party made today and the realistic or lack thereof nature of it. You're making a promise for what will happen in a decade, but the CMHC has said 3.5 million new homes are needed by 2030 to restore affordability. What does this promise for something that comes to fruition in a decade actually do to help Canadians today?
Well, we can tell you that when you're talking to people and door to door in the streets, their main worries is housing. When I see the Liberals and the Conservatives talking about tax cuts, and it seems like they're having the same exact campaign, but we're talking about those issues that are so fundamental to the people in our ridings. In Verdun, LaSalle, Villemard, where I'm knocking doors, people are worried about rental prices. They're worried about their prices going up. They're worried about being evicted. You hear it at almost every door, seniors, students. So what we're saying is that there's a lot of actual federal land available today that we can build nonprofit housing. And nonprofit housing is the only way we're going to actually reduce the cost of housing. Because what we're talking about, the supply side economics that these other two parties are talking about, these are talking about delaying the rise in the cost of housing, but it's not going to fix the actual cost of housing. It's not going to bring it down. But when we're talking about nonprofit housing, exactly what the NDP is proposing today, that's how we're going to bring down housing prices. And it's concrete and it's long term. If you look at the OECD average in terms of how much non-market housing is available in countries that are OECD, there are twice as many houses as what we have in Canada. That's 7% to Canada's only 3.5%. So we actually have to do a heck of a lot of work to bring housing affordability to Canadians, and we have to start today. Today, where we started our campaign was where we started it 4 years ago as well. We asked the Liberal government to open up Canadian federal-held land for nonprofit housing, and nothing's been done over 4 years. We want to see action, and you have to start today in order to truly bring together housing affordability for all Canadians.
And I do understand the point you're making, but I would point out there was in Budget 2024 a pretty specific promise about opening up Crown lands. And second, I do have to follow up on the original line of questioning, which is as you do knock on those doors, for example, in LaSalle or Verdun, and they tell you they have a problem right now with paying rent, what does housing 10 years from now do for them?
Our plan is from now, we're starting as soon as we form government. Until 10 years, we want to build the homes. We want to build all these hundreds of thousands of social housing developments. And what the federal Liberals have done is that opened up federal public lands for private profiteers. That's exactly what they've done. So obviously,
but what if that
NDP's
gets it done
solution,
sooner?
But again, new construction, if you look on the market, it's always more expensive. That's what's available on the market because new countertops, everything's new. So it's not going to bring down pricing in the immediate sense. This supply side economics will only reduce the rise in the reduce the speed in which housing costs go up, but it won't solve housing costs and it won't bring them down long term. The NDP's plan is the only one that's calling to actually bring down housing prices with non-market solutions. That's what distinguishes us from these two other parties that seem to have the exact same logic.
Okay, I got to do one. I have time for one quick round, 1 point for each of you. Mr. Sousa, I wanted to ask you just in general. It seems the way that Mr. Carney is presenting a lot of this, even what you were saying today, is a little bit of a concession that the government you were a part of for a number of years overspent. Why should anyone trust a Liberal government going forward not to continue overspending?
Mark Carney has proven himself time and time again to navigate through these kind of storms. And when I was involved after the 2008 recession, we had critical issues to overcome. We had to manage our expenses. We had to promote economic growth and stimulate growth by, in this case, investing heavily in infrastructure, things that enable us to be more competitive. Mark Carney is doing the same right now in terms of a national unity agenda to try to ensure that all the provinces are working collaboratively together quickly to overcome the challenges that are before us, to ensure that we strengthen our sovereignty, to protect our Arctic, to ensure that we have greater trade routes across the other parts of the world, to lessen our reliance on the United States. We certainly have to deal with the United States very carefully because we are their greatest partner and their biggest trade. All these things have to be taken into consideration. Unlike what I'm worried about in terms of slogans or in terms of looking at measures that are dividing the country, we got to stay united. And I have full faith in Mark Carney, having proven time and time again to get over these hurdles to ensure that we meet the challenge and succeed. He's done that, and we can, as Canada, we can do so as we go forward, even stronger than before.
Just really quickly, is there any reason? So is it just Mark Carney? That's the difference. That's why Canadians should all of a sudden feel that 10 years of deficit spending will come to an end. We
have a strong number of individuals that are working very, very hard to protect Canada's interests, and we are taking a number of steps with the team. And Team Canada is doing its part, and a number of others that are part of the group have taken initiatives that I don't believe the Conservatives or the NDP have the depth by which to do so. And this is critical. Canadians have a choice. You see before you a number of individuals that have had proven experience in dealing with these matters in the past, and they can continue to provide for Canada. Talking about the economy is about people. It's not just about the numbers. And for some, it's only a matter of what can we cut to try to get to a certain threshold. It's not about the cuts. It's about the investments that we can do to try to succeed in enabling us to sustain the programs that are important to them. This is what we are doing as Liberal Party of Canada.
Mr. Baird, I want to turn over to you and give you and Mr. Sauvé a word on all of this. And I did want to jump off what Mr. Sousa is saying insofar as, look, tax cuts will help a lot of Canadians, but other programs like dental care, the Canada Child Benefit, particularly help the lowest income Canadians. Why are you not more concerned about them?
Take a look at what the Conservative record is in introducing a program like the Universal Child Care Benefit, which was the
but not means tested, right? In the same way that this one is.
Which was the the first type program of that type, and that's something that that we've said we'd support. There can be a fiction spun by the Liberals, but let's take a look at what the costed platforms are when they come out. We know that the Liberals' plans for the books to balance themselves saw our national debt double. We see deficits that have just driven up inflation and absolutely crushed the power of the paychecks that Canadians have. And they've put us in a position of weakness when we're dealing with these threats from the United States. Our plan is to put Canada first and to actually harness the power of our natural resources, for example, and get our clean, ethical natural resources to market and to diversify our trade so that Canadians will have that prosperity that really has been left in the ground over the last 9 years.
It sounds like you're kind of banking on economic growth, this mythical economic growth, to save your budget as well. In that costing, will you detail exactly what programs you'll keep and cut?
Absolutely. Okay. You can count on Conservatives actually prioritizing working Canadians. They've been left behind by these Liberals. Just take a look at the food bank use in this country, which has doubled after 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. We have people choosing between heating and eating. Their carbon tax left people freezing in the dark and unable to put gas in their truck to get to work. This is something all the while you have Mark Carney, who's pumping.
He got rid of it.
No, to be clear.
He zeroed it.
Yeah, to be clear, Mark Carney did not remove the carbon tax, and he said he's going to raise the carbon tax on which is going to be passed on to consumers just like the carbon tax. But what's Mark Carney done overseas is he's invested heavily in coal, telling Canadians that they can't drive their car to work. Meanwhile, he's making money off coal in other countries, investing in pipelines in other countries. You just can't take these guys seriously. When Mark Carney doesn't need Canadians' votes, but he does need their money, you can guarantee he's going to raise that carbon tax.
I'm already going heavy. We will reconvene to discuss the merits of each leadership candidate. I promise, Mr. Sauvé, I do want to give you the last word. Both of your colleagues have essentially insinuated the NDP is, or other parties rather, is out of their depth, particularly when it comes to the management of the economy at such a crucial time for Canada. Does the NDP care if there's a deficit or not?
Look, what I'm hearing from these two parties is the same trickle-down economic theory that hasn't worked for Canadians. They're talking about making the billionaires and millionaires more rich so that we hope that the profit will trickle down to average Canadians. And that's not what's happened over successive Liberal and Conservative governments for the last decades. Wealth inequality has gone up. And what has Canada and the U.S. done during the Depression and after the war? We invested in social programs. We invested in social housing. That's what got us out of our messes of the Depression and the post-war period. That's exactly what we need. We need to create social solidarity. We need to strengthen Canadians, take care of workers in a tough time to make sure that we get through this together and we stay together, keep our elbows up. That's how we're going to make it through this, not by trying to make the rich richer and then hoping that somehow the money's going to get and come down to the average Canadians. That's not what we can do anymore.
Just very quickly, does that mean the NDP will run deficits of this size or greater, and will you have a fully costed platform?
Our fiscal plan, and it's a great fiscal plan. I'm very excited for you guys to see it, but all in due time. Today we were talking about housing, which is going to be one of our main platform planks because that's what people are talking about the doors. They want to know how we can reduce their housing prices and save them from evictions.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Thank you all for making time for the discussion tonight. I really appreciate it. I hope we can reconvene throughout the campaign. Charles Sousa, Michael Barrett, and Craig Sauvé. We've got more from the campaign trail again after a short break. Our reporters who are trailing each of the parties will join me live after that, after this.
I can tell you with so much confidence, people are better off when you elect New Democrats. We fight for you, we stand up for you, and we deliver.
What we need is a new Conservative government that will put Canada first for a change. So I'll tell you what we are going to do. We will be cutting bureaucracy, cutting consultants.
We will have to do things that we haven't imagined before at speeds we didn't think possible. And that means building millions of homes, building Canada into an energy superpower.
Party leaders there on the second official day of this country's 45th federal election. Here's a look at where they're focusing campaign efforts today. Liberal leader Mark Carney is in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in Brampton and Mississauga, both cities on the outskirts of Toronto. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh started the day in Montreal before hitting the highway for Toronto. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet is in Quebec City, and the Greens are in Montreal. Let's start with the Liberal campaign. Mark Carney's first promise came yesterday, as we were just discussing with MPs, pledging to lower the lowest federal income tax bracket from 15% to 14%. So far on day two, he hasn't pitched new policy, instead focusing on how he'd handle U.S. President Donald Trump.
First, respect for our country as a sovereign nation. You would expect, given what these people have done and the long history, you would think respect and friendship for Canada. I'm just looking for respect at this point, acknowledgement of our sovereign nation. Secondly, given the scale of the U.S. trade actions against steel and aluminum, which is absolutely against the terms of CUSMA, given the series of other actions and the prospective actions on the 2nd of April, we need to have a comprehensive discussion with the Americans on the broader economic and, I would say, security partnership as well.
Our Judy Trin is following the Liberal campaign all week. She joins us now from Halifax. Hey, Judy, what's the strategy behind the Trump focus today?
Well, you know, taking off from that Carney clip that you just played, what I can tell you, Bashi, is that since he was sworn in as Prime Minister, there has not been a call at all between Mark Carney and President Trump, despite overtures from the federal government, from Ambassador Hillman to establish that call. And what Carney told the reporters today was that it is his interpretation that Donald Trump does not want to speak with anyone until a prime minister is elected. So a prime minister elected with a mandate. So that call is going to be put off. So what we have today was Carney being in the riding of Gander. This is a pivotal riding, Vashi, because it is the only riding in all of Newfoundland that was won by the Conservatives in 2021. It would have been a clean sweep for the Liberals if not for this one. And this is also a riding in which there is a lot of anger over the carbon tax. As you know, Vashi, there was a rift between Premier Andrew Furey as well as Prime Minister Trudeau over the carbon tax when the Premier asked for a pause. And that actually led to a large amount of the population turning against the Liberals. So Mark Carney was in that riding and in Newfoundland first and foremost because he has yet to visit that province. He wasn't able to get there during his leadership campaign, so he really wanted to show Maritimers, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that he is listening to them and that he cares.
Okay, Judy, thanks so much. Look forward to your reporting all week. That's our Judy Trin in Halifax. She's following the Liberal campaign. Over to the Conservatives. Party leader Pierre Poilievre in vote-rich Ontario, pledging this morning to cut federal income tax as well. He says the Tories will reduce the lowest federal tax bracket from 15% to 12.75%.
Canada First Conservatives will cut income taxes by 15% for the average worker or $2,000 for the average couple. This is a tax cut for seniors who are drawing their pension or retirement income. They will pay, on average, 15% less. This is a tax cut for the workers behind me who will pay 15% less on their income tax. This is a tax cut for the waitress, for the welder, for the barber. This is a tax cut for everybody who has ever got up early in the morning and worked hard to build our country. This is a tax cut that will put Canada first.
Our senior political correspondent Michael Couture is following the Conservative campaign. He joins us now from Mississauga. Mike, let's talk strategy there as well. What is it behind this being the big announcement this early in the campaign?
Yeah, Vash, I think it's pretty clear where he's trying to go and who he's trying to appeal to. I mean, Pierre Poilievre has said you shouldn't be punished for making money and trying to earn a good paycheck. And that is what he's trying to do right here, making sure that he is taking care of those people at the bottom end of the tax bracket, as you had sort of sketched out there in where he's going for it. I think he's trying to really be the person who is going to fight for the little guy here in this election, trying to stake out that part of the campaign right now and trying to make sure that he continues to do that and tell Canadians that that is where the Conservatives will be, that they will be the ones that are trying to make sure to protect Canadians' paychecks. And again, it comes back to the theme that he keeps going on, is the promise of Canada and making sure that if you do have a good job, that you can take home a good paycheck and that you can have a good house. Those are the words that come out of his mouth every day. He's trying to hammer them home. It is that type of repetition that the Conservatives are using to try and get through to Canadians, to try and communicate to them that they are the only party that is doing this. And it's interesting because he talked about costing. We asked him about it today, and he said that there would be a number of cuts, not going to go with any more contractors. He says that the Liberals have done, also saying that he will be making cuts to foreign aid. And I think that gets a lot of people's sort of minds up and minds in the area of thinking that that is where Donald Trump went, U.S. president, where he was campaigning and saying that he would do a tax break on the backs of or at the sacrifice of foreign aid. And certainly those parallels are being drawn already, Vashi.
Okay, Mike, thanks so much. Appreciate your reporting as well. Look forward to it all week. Over to the NDP. The leader of that party, Jagmeet Singh, used the start of the campaign to make a housing announcement in Montreal, pledging a number of measures to build rent control homes on Crown land.
When I talk to people, everywhere I go, they say, I can't find a place that's affordable. I can't find a place that I can afford to rent. I simply cannot find anything. And for those people, I want to let you know that I hear you. It's frustrating. I can see why you're so angry, because there's nothing there that's affordable. And so we're going to fight for you. Our plan is, when we see federal land, we want to use all of it 100% of federal land that's usable to build homes that are affordable, homes that are non-market housing, homes that are truly affordable where you can actually afford to call your own, a home to put a roof over your head, a place to call your own. That's what we want to do.
Singh is now traveling along the 401 from Montreal to Toronto. What's the strategy behind today's housing announcement? Our Rachel Aiello is with us from the NDP's campaign bus. Hey, Rachel.
Yeah, Vashi, Jagmeet Singh making this affordability announcement focused on housing today had two main motivations behind it. One, Jagmeet Singh was clearly trying to make a point about Liberal inaction on the file, but it was also a demonstration of what the NDP are saying their strategy to try to find a place for Jagmeet Singh amid the Trump conversation. So on the issue of housing affordability, Jagmeet Singh made this announcement at the same site that he visited in 2021 where he committed to build more affordable housing, to make the point that since then, no housing had been built there. So he's clearly trying to drive home there, Vashi, that he thinks that Liberals are not doing enough on this file. New Democrats I've been speaking with on the ground in Montreal were indicating that they have been hearing on the doorsteps from Canadians who are still having a hard time affording their rent and let alone saving up to buy a home. So the NDP are really going to try to convert that conversation, make that messaging link to the Trump issue. Obviously, the NDP are aware that all parties agree on a retaliatory response to tariffs, but they're really wanting Canadians to think about the bigger picture of, other than going one-on-one with Donald Trump, who do you want as the leader to steer the country through the years ahead? So he wants Canadians to be thinking about who would be looking out for the little guy in a situation of an economic recession, who would be calling for more supports for those who need them the most, who are the most hurt by Trump's tariffs and all the economic turmoil they have caused. So that is really the twofold strategy here, Vashi, from the NDP today. One, continuing to talk about affordable housing, making sure Canadians are reminded of those cost of living issues that were front of mind for so many before the Trump issue really came forward, and then trying to make sure that the NDP have some territory and some ground in this election that is very much clearly about our Canada-U.S. trade tensions, if we can put it pretty diplomatically. So that was really the impetus behind NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's announcement today. And you know, one of the main messages I think that we're going to expect to hear from him going forward is the country is better, he says, and he said this a few times in his press conference today, with more New Democrats elected. So we'll see over the next month or so if that message is able to resonate, and if that's something that is going to translate to more votes for the NDP, something the current polls show, Vashi, they're in pretty dire need of.
All right, thanks so much. That's our Rachel Aiello on the NDP campaign bus. And those reporters, Rachel, Judy, and Mike, will be alongside the campaigns for the duration of the week, and we'll have live reports every night on Power Play. On the other end of a quick break tonight, we're going to bring in our front bench. We've got so much strategy to unpack behind what you just heard. Dan Moulton, Shakir Chambers, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone will join me in just 2 minutes. Back in a moment.
Canada First Conservatives will cut income taxes by 15% for the average worker or $2,000 for the average couple.
We're acting by putting more money in Canadians' pockets through a middle-class tax cut that I announced yesterday, a tax cut that will save a two-income family up to $825 a year.
2 days of the federal election campaign and 2 tax cut promises, with both the Liberals and Conservatives focusing on the lowest federal tax bracket. That's all income under $57,000. It currently sits at 15%. Mark Carney is promising a Liberal government would lower that rate by 1% to 14%, while Pierre Poilievre has announced a Conservative government would go further, cutting the tax rate by more than 2% to sit at 12.75%. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was asked about the tax cut. Here's how he responded.
That tax cut is going to give the exact same amount of money to someone earning $500,000 than it would give to someone earning $50,000. I don't think that makes much sense.
All right, let's bring in our front bench to talk about how the parties are launching their campaigns. Former senior advisor to the Liberal Ontario governments of Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, Dan Moulton, is with us. He's now a partner with Crestview Strategy. Shakir Chambers is vice president at Oyster Group. He worked in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office before becoming a policy advisor to the International Trade Minister. Kathleen Monk is the former director of communications to the late Jack Layton. She is now the principal owner of Monk & Associates. And Laura Stone is a Queen's Park reporter for the Globe and Mail. Hi, everybody. Happy happy campaign, happy Monday. Dan, I'll start with you. I think it would be an easy guess as to why the Conservatives want to be talking about tax cuts off the bat and why the NDP want to focus on housing. What's the strategy for the Liberals when we know Trump has worked effectively for them over the last 6 weeks or so in focusing on a tax cut on day one? Is it clearing the deck or is it something different?
Well, honestly, I think it was smart of the Conservatives to release their tax cut policy this morning after Mark Carney talked about it last night at his rally and his launch in St. John's. I think it focused the campaign today on the topic of affordability, which frankly is strong ground for them, right? So I think it was smarter than to put that out this morning. I think the reason we spent the day talking about tax cuts as opposed to Trump and tariffs is because the Conservatives made that move, and kudos to them. Frankly, I think they're going to have to land stronger punches, though, if they want to change the trajectory of this campaign. It really was a draw day. I mean, the two parties have very similar tax cut policies that they're introducing. Affordability is a concern for a lot of Canadians still, so I think it speaks to those issues. But I'm not sure it knocked anybody off their game. I'm not sure anybody won this day. I think it was a draw. And frankly, if the Conservatives want to change the trajectory of this campaign, they're going to have to land much stronger punches on the Liberals in order to knock them off their footing. I think Mark Carney's had a very good start to this campaign. He looked great out in Gander today. I think they focused on some really strong messaging that, will resonate with a lot of voters that are important in Atlantic Canada and in Central Canada. And I think we're going to see a really sort of easy ride for him unless there are stronger punches landing. And frankly, I'm just not seeing that.
Do you think that's the case, Shakir? And what do you anticipate from the Conservatives in the next few days?
It's day one, so I mean, there'll be much more to come from the Conservatives. Listen, I think they started off the way they need to start it off. Affordability is what they want to talk about. I don't think the Liberals want to talk about affordability because, I mean, once they get into that conversation, and once you start talking about the cost of living and why things, do cost so much, the natural question is, well, who was in power while all this happened? And the answer is obviously the Liberal Party. So good for the Conservatives. If they can keep this narrative going, that's obviously very strong for them. And I assume there'll be a lot more attacks and other policies that kind of make Mark Carney a little wobbly. I know that they want to talk about Trump a lot and they want to project Mark Carney as this guy who's just this chief negotiator who is unshakable. But I think if he's going to be having troubles dealing with the opposition, it kind of erodes that image of Mark Carney as this, this guy that just it's built to go after Donald Trump and negotiate with Donald Trump. So we'll see what happens in the days ahead. But to Dan, it's day one. There's going to be a lot more coming your way, and we'll see if Mark Carney can handle it.
What did you think, Kathleen, of the kind of narrative coming out of the initial part of this campaign, and where do you think it goes over the next few days?
I think actually Mark Carney might have given a bit of a gift to the Conservatives. With him announcing his tax cut on day one, on Sunday, it actually gave the Conservatives the ability to pivot back to their own tax cut and bring it back, as Dan and Shakir have said, back on that affordability message for the Conservatives. And the Conservatives, remember, were desperate to do that. Why? Because the other main headline in this story is what? That Danielle Smith actually went to folks in the U.S. imploring that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance basically back off on the attacks of Canada because she's putting her party, both the Conservatives and her own interests, ahead of country. And I think that the Conservatives were dying to get away from that story in any way they could. So it was a bit of a gift in terms of Carney and them reacting it, but it also speaks to the fact that affordability is still a huge issue for Canadians. It's the number one issue. Yes, the threat of Trump is up there and is really high, but below that, you see affordability issues, the economy, jobs. People are worried about their jobs. So that's why everybody, including Jagmeet Singh, is talking about affordability issues. But the difference between the two big line corporate parties, where they're doing tax cuts for folks, frankly, who make over $250,000, who don't need those kind of tax cuts, Jagmeet Singh was focusing on affordable rent that actually would help people get by, using federal land, making it affordable. And that's why his slogan, unlike the other two parties, is in it for you. He's in it for people who need the help. He's not just in it to give a break for high earners in Canada. There's no offset. Even Justin Trudeau had an offset for folks who are the high earners when he put in a middle class tax cut. But both Pierre Poilievre and frankly Mark Carney are prepared to give away money to folks, whether it's canceling the capital gains, to frankly people who are already making huge high wealth salaries.
Let's unpack that for a second, Laura, because I understand certainly from a strategic perspective why the NDP is saying what Kathleen is, right? Like in particular, the lumping together of Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, because some of what they talk about is a lot more similar than anything the Liberals and Conservatives have said in the last 10 years. At the same time, what are the risks associated with the NDP for saying, like, we're against tax cuts more largely?
Well, I mean, look, the NDP has to differentiate itself from these two other parties, particularly the Liberals, and certainly the Liberals are creating kind of a space in the left of center or on the more progressive side of the spectrum, as the Liberals seem to be fishing from the same pool as the Conservatives now, right? Maybe more progressive Conservative votes, more right of center. Mr. Carney certainly trying to look more fiscally conservative, I think, than his predecessor. So, I mean, Mr. Singh is just trying to create an opportunity for himself as he enters this campaign, kind of as a self-proclaimed, or agreeing certainly with the media as an underdog in this. We've seen the polls have been difficult for the NDP, particularly since they left that agreement with the Liberals. I think they've struggled to find their footing and their identity, and maybe Mr. Carney has created that space for them now to be the true kind of progressive choice as Mr. Carney makes his move to the right, and you know, certainly on the fiscal side of things. And I think Mr. Carney would argue, look, we still want to keep those social programs, we want to keep dental care, pharma care, you know, all of these programs that they created with the NDP in the last parliament. But Jagmeet Singh, I think, kind of doesn't really have another option than to distance himself from these two other parties as Mr. Singh kind of tries to find his footing in the early days of this race.
I wanted to circle back, Dan, to something Kathleen raised around Danielle Smith, right? Because that's that interview that she gave Breitbart, and we have some of what she said during it. But basically, the insinuation that she conveyed to the people in and around Trent that the longer this dispute goes on, politicians' posture, it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now. Let's put things on pause so we can get through an election. She later came out, and her office said any suggestion the Premier is asking the U.S. to interfere in Canada's election is offensive and false. But again, from a strategic perspective, I imagine this kind of stuff works to what the Liberals view as a big vulnerability for Poilievre, which is any comparison to the Trump world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a number of years now, Pierre Poilievre has presented a style of politics that stylistically looks and feels a lot like American right-wing conservatism under Donald Trump. And so it's going to be very difficult for Pierre Poilievre to create distance for himself from that. I think Donald Trump handed him a tool to do that last week when in an interview he insinuated that, you know, he'd rather to have the Liberals in power. And then Danielle Smith squandered that, right? I think like her comments are very clear. There's no way to walk away from them. It's obvious what she was saying. And I think anytime a Canadian wonders, where's Donald Trump on Canada? Why isn't he coming at us in the same way? He seems to be quiet on these issues of 51st state. People are going to be left wondering, is it because he wants to help the Conservatives? Is it because people like Danielle Smith have got to him? And I think that just has undermined what would have been an otherwise very clean start to this campaign for Poilievre on these Trump issues, which we all know are going to be the dominant topic of this campaign and the territory on which the Liberals want to be fighting.
I've just got 2 minutes. I want to get everybody in. Shakir, he got a couple of questions, Mr. Poilievre, on both days of the campaign so far. He quickly pivoted to, you know, his own messaging about what Canada should do. How do you anticipate he does handle what I think Dan rightly points out will be things raised on the trail all the time?
Yeah, and listen, it obviously will be a difficult dance. Like you rightly pointed out, both on day one and today, they tried to ask him about Trump and his Trump comparison. So we'll see how he does moving forward. I think Danielle Smith obviously did him no favors. And I think the bigger issue with Danielle Smith is I actually don't think a lot of Canadians heard this clip or understand what was going on right now. But what I do think is going to happen is that the Liberals are going to take this clip and at some point in the campaign, you know, put an ad together. And I think that repetition of what she's saying is going to be damaging down the road. So I do think Pierre has a delicate dance ahead in terms of how he navigates the Trump issue. But I mean, if he has one saving grace, Donald Trump himself has said he's no MAGA guy. He's not like me. So I think that gives him some distance on the issue.
Listen, he's also said that
Kathleen, what do
he's
you
more
think?
aligned with Pierre Poilievre, right? Trump has said that his views are more aligned with Pierre Poilievre. So listen, the only person that's not endorsed so far by Trump is Jagmeet Singh. So maybe he can put that in his hat and get some votes there, because right now there's no tolerance on behalf of Canadians. And I just want to challenge one point that Shakir said. There's an insatiable appetite for Canadians to look at the news on what Trump is saying and what others are saying to Trump right now about Canada. So I think people will hear the statement about what Danielle Smith said, imploring Trump basically to make sure that he backs off so Pierre Poilievre could win. I think it's incredibly problematic. Listen, people are shunning their friends who are going to Florida. They are shunning people who buy U.S. products in the grocery store. They are upset about this fight, and they're going to be upset at the Premier of Alberta that she's put her party, both provincially and federally, ahead of our country.
Okay, Laura, I promise I'll go twice to you next time the commercial hits hard. I apologize. Thanks to our front bench. You're the best. Dan Moulton, Shakir Chambers, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone. We're back after a very short break. Stay right there. Welcome back to Power Play. We want to take a closer look at the Trump factor and the degree to which it might dominate our federal election. U.S. President Donald Trump is, of course, taking aim at this country's economy and our sovereignty. Canadian steel and aluminum, as well as non-CUSMA compliant goods, are already under 25% American import tariffs. And before dissolving Parliament, the government here responded with counter tariffs on $59.8 billion worth of American goods. Trump's next threat date for fresh tariffs is Wednesday, about a week and a half from now, April 2nd, when global reciprocal tariffs will kick in. Today, though, he signaled some countries and sectors might get a pass for now. Take a listen.
I may give a lot of countries breaks, but it's reciprocal, but we might be even nicer than that. You know, we've been very nice to a lot of countries for a long time, but I call it Liberation Day. April 2nd is Liberation Day. But not all tariffs are included that day. For instance, we'll do some. As you know, we have already done steel and aluminum, and that's at a 25% level. And we are going to be doing automobiles, which you've known about for a long time. We'll be announcing that fairly soon, over the next few days probably. And then April 2nd comes. That'll be reciprocal tariffs. But we may take less than what they're charging because they've charged us so much. I don't think they could take it.
Trump's team has floated everything from the GST to the digital services tax as taxes or tariffs, in their view, that they would reciprocate against, but no clarity on exactly what any of that could mean for Canada on April the 2nd. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll have more Power Play just ahead. Welcome back to Power Play. We're going to have extensive coverage throughout the next 5 weeks of the election. I wanted to flag for you a couple key days. The French debate, the official one, will take place April 16th. Some controversy over the possibility of another French debate hosted by TVA. Today, they had asked previously all the parties to pitch in. Mark Carney earlier today said why not to participating, and later in the day the party said that they would no longer do that. So that debate is canceled. The official one, this one, April 17th, or sorry, April 16th. The English version will happen April 17th. Both of those will take place in Montreal. Advance voting gets underway April 18th until the 21st. And then, of course, the big day is Election Day, April 28th. We will be there alongside you for all of it. I'm going to leave tonight's Power Play there. I'm Vashi Capellas. Thank you so much for watching this evening, and have a wonderful rest of your night.